Welcome to True Echo, where silence breaks, truth speaks, and real stories rise louder than hate. Today's story begins not with fists, but with footsteps. Two black twin sisters walked through the gates of an elite private school, carrying nothing but discipline, legacy, and a quiet fire the world wasn't ready for. From cruel whispers to public humiliation, the system tried to erase them. But what it didn't know. These girls had been trained to stand their ground, not for revenge but for dignity. And when the moment came, they didn't just fight back. They rewrote the rules. This isn't just a story of racism and resistance. It's a story of strength that doesn't shout, yet shakes the ground. Stay with us, because what happens next will echo far beyond the school halls. The morning light at St. Barrington Academy didn't welcome outsiders, it exposed them. Layla and Nia Monroe stood at the foot of the school's grand entrance, where white stone columns stretched toward the sky like silent sentinels of tradition. Their matching uniforms were immaculate but not flashy. Black loafers polished, blazers sharp, posture upright. It wasn't about fashion. It was about armor. They'd been warned this day would come, though not in words. Their father's lessons didn't arrive as lectures. They came in the pauses between sparring drills, in the silence after each block encounter. Elias Monroe had trained them not just to protect themselves, but to read a room before it turned hostile. At St. Barrington the air was already turning. "I don't blink," Nia murmured, her voice steady beside her sister's. It was their ritual. Layla gave a soft nod. Together they stepped forward. From the first moment, every gaze turned like clockwork. Faces of privilege, scrubbed clean with money and lineage, tilted to stare as if the twins were an unexpected storm on a blue sky day. Whispers followed, not hidden but sharp, as if the school's legacy had suddenly developed a glitch. Two black girls, twins no less, walking like they belonged. They didn't slow. Didn't look down. That too was training. The first voice came near the stairs. "Yo, double trouble," a boy smirked, leaning against the marble railing. His friends laughed, not loud but with the practiced ease of people used to permission. "What's this, scholarship day?" The boy with the smirk was Bon Ashford. His hair was the kind of white blonde that caught the sun, his eyes pale and amused like cruelty was a game. Son of a senator, heir to arrogance. His gaze was slow, measured, as if he were choosing whether to be amused or aggressive. Layla kept walking. Nia didn't flinch. That's what strength looked like when it wasn't allowed to be loud. Inside the main hall the air thickened. Students shifted aside as they passed, not in awe but discomfort. As if even brushing against them might stain their own carefully curated reputations. Oil paintings of alumni lined the walls, all white, all stern, like ghosts of a past that still chose the future. At lunch, they sat alone in the corner of a grand dining room lined with mahogany panels and chandeliers. Conversations hummed around them, low and tight, like strings pulled taut. No one made eye contact. But the message was clear. "This isn't a school," Nia whispered, eyes scanning the room. "It's a museum." "Then we're the new exhibit," Layla replied, biting into her apple without looking up. That's when it happened. The shove came from behind. Not accidental. Not playful. Calculated. Layla's tray jostled, potatoes smearing across her front. She turned slowly. "Oh, sorry," Bon said, hands raised in faux innocence. "Didn't see you there." "You should watch where you're going," Layla said, her tone calm, clipped. That smirk twitched. She wasn't supposed to talk back. From that moment on they were marked. The days passed with quiet escalation. Gum under their desks. Lockers mysteriously reassigned to the farthest, coldest corners of the gym. Water bottles mysteriously knocked over at their feet. In class, whispers grew sharper. In hallways, stares lingered longer. And still they didn't respond. Because restraint wasn't surrender. It was power. And power, their father had taught them, was measured by how you moved when the world wanted you to fall. At home, Elias Monroe saw it. Not in bruises but in the way they carried themselves. Tighter shoulders. More controlled smiles. "Remember what I told you," he said one evening as they cleaned the dinner table. "Don't react," Nia replied quietly. "React with purpose," Elias corrected. "Don't just absorb. Absorbing becomes silence. Silence becomes permission. You're not here to make them comfortable." "And if they push?" Layla asked. "Then you push back," he said. "But never forget who you are. Don't let them make you forget." They nodded. Because they already knew. The next morning the air at school felt heavier. It was the kind of quiet that came before a storm. People paused when they walked past. Smiles were absent. Even the teachers looked aware. When they reached their lockers they stopped cold. Spray painted in dripping red and black were the words, rats. Crude drawings of their faces, exaggerated lips, twisted noses, covered the metal. Banana peels hung from the handles. Dozens of paper slips were stuffed through the vents, each scribbled with racial slurs in bold marker. Laughter erupted behind them. Cameron, the redhead from algebra, had his phone out. Recording. We thought we'd make it feel like home, Seth joked behind them. Layla's hand tightened on her locker. Nia's jaw set. But they didn't speak. Not yet. Then Brandon, the ringleader, stepped forward. His voice carried through the hallway. Smile for the yearbook, he said, tossing a roll of toilet paper at their feet. Might be your last picture here. Laughter again. But it wasn't the same as before. Beneath it was tension. Even some of the bystanders felt the line being crossed. Nia turned to Layla. They want a show, she said. I'm not giving it to them. I'm giving them what they earned, Nia answered. Jonah moved first. His shoulders slammed into Nia's ribs, hard enough to knock her sideways. The locker rattled. It was the spark. Layla stepped between them, grabbing Jonah's wrist in one swift move, her stance sharp and trained. But Seth was already in motion, knocking her binder from her hand, scattering her books. Didn't see you there, he sneered. Cameron zoomed in with his phone. Then Brandon shoved Nia hard. She didn't stumble this time. She moved. Come. Precise. Her arms snapped up and redirected his momentum off balance. No drama. No violence. Just control. Brandon staggered, blinking in confusion. Jonah charged Layla, but she swept his feet from under him in one clean motion. Seth lunged, but she twisted, using his momentum against him, and slammed him lightly into the wall. Nia ducked under Brandon's second swing. One elbow to the gut. Cling. Controlled. The crowd froze. Phones up. Mouths open. No one laughing. Just watching. The twins stood tall, breathing steady, uniforms slightly rumpled but faces unbroken. You wanted a show, Layla said. Here it is. Next time, don't start something you can't finish, Nia added. Then they turned and began peeling the paint from their lockers. They didn't crack. They drew the line. And now the whole school saw it. The silence that followed the fight was louder than any insult they'd endured. As students scattered through the halls, buzzing like startled bees, word of what had happened spread before the vice principal even arrived. Phones were still up, videos uploading, the footage already halfway across private group chats and social media by the time Mr. Grayson stormed into the corridor. He wasn't angry about the violence. He was angry because he hadn't controlled the story. What is going on here? He demanded, his eyes bouncing from Brandon hunched over clutching his stomach, to Jonah still dazed against the lockers, then finally to Layla and Nia, standing straight, composed, untouched by guilt. Brandon groaned, pointing toward the girls. They jumped us, he wheezed. They just lost it. No one echoed him. Not Seth. Not Cameron. Not the growing number of students lingering nearby who had seen the entire thing unfold. Everyone knew who had started it. And everyone had seen how it ended. Grayson's expression faltered for a split second. The reality was sinking in. His star student athlete was on the ground. His senator's son looked weak. And two black girls, twins with perfect records, had just defended themselves with discipline he couldn't punish without questions he didn't want to answer. We'll handle this inside, he said, voice clipped, already reaching for his walkie. Inside the administrative office, the air felt sterile and artificial, as if pretending hard enough could erase the mess. Layla and Nia sat side by side outside Principal Aldridge's office. Straight backs. Silent. Still carrying the same calm that had carried them through the fight. Across from them, Brandon clutched an ice pack, his eyes darting around like he was looking for someone else to blame. Seth paced with a limp that was more theater than injury. Jonah kept dabbing at a barely there scrape like it was a battlefield wound. When Elias Monroe arrived, he didn't rush. He walked in with the steadiness of someone who had seen storms before and didn't flinch anymore. His presence filled the space without noise, without threat, just weight. The kind that made people adjust their postures without even realizing. He didn't look at the boys. He didn't address the secretary. He went straight to his daughters. Are you okay? He asked, not just checking for bruises but reading their eyes. We're good, Layla said softly. We did it right. He gave a slight nod. Not approval. Not celebration. Just understanding. Inside the principal's office, the temperature felt colder. Principal Aldridge sat behind his polished desk, face strained with forced neutrality. Mr. Grayson stood stiffly beside him. Brandon's parents, Alan and Christine Drake, had arrived minutes earlier and were already mid-rant. "This is unacceptable," Christine snapped. "Our son was attacked. These girls, these outsiders, have no place at St. Barrington. This is what happens when you just hand out scholarships." "Enough," Elias said quietly. The room went still. Even Aldridge looked up. "My daughters were harassed, insulted, and finally assaulted. And when they defended themselves, they did it with restraint." Alan scoffed. "If that's not what the other students said, would you like to review the videos?" Elias asked, turning his gaze slowly. "Because over a dozen students recorded it. It's already online. Perhaps we should watch it together." Alan's mouth closed. Christine's face paled. Principal Aldridge shifted in his chair. "We're conducting a full review of the incident," he said, throat clearing. "Until then, all students involved." "No," Elias interrupted. "Come. Clear. Unyielding. We're not pretending this was mutual. My daughters filed 2 formal complaints this month. You did nothing. And now that they've defended themselves, you want to suspend them." Grayson stepped in weakly. "It's standard protocol." "Standard has failed them," Elias said, leaning forward just enough to command the room. "If you suspend my daughters, we're not walking out of this school. We're walking into court." The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone in that room knew the Monroes had the moral high ground, and this time proof. Aldridge rubbed his temple, defeated. "We'll review everything thoroughly." Elias rose. "I expect you will. And while you do, maybe ask yourselves why the first person to stop the abuse wasn't a teacher, but my daughters." When they left the office, suspension pending review, Elias walked between his girls, not to shield them but to walk beside their strength. Outside, the fall air bit with sharp wind. Layla pulled her coat tighter. "They're going to come back harder now," she said. "I know," Elias replied, eyes focused ahead. "They'll come to our door." He didn't blink. "Let them." Nia tilted her head. "And if they do? Then they'll learn something uglier than their hate," he said. "What's that?" Layla asked. "That strength," he answered, "doesn't knock. It answers." Back home, the sky hung heavy with bruised clouds. The wind pushed through the trees with a warning whisper. Inside their home, the Monroes sat at the kitchen table. Not in fear. In readiness. Layla folded her hands. "Do you think they'll really show up?" "I think people like that don't lose quietly," Elias said. "But we're not the ones who need to be afraid." The knock came just before nightfall. It wasn't a knock, really. It was 3 hard slams against the door, fists used to getting their way. Elias opened it before the 4th hit could land. Christine and Alan Drake stood outside, breathing hard. Their faces twisted in fury. "You think you can get away with humiliating our son like that?" Christine spat. "You think this is over?" Elias stood tall. "Your son humiliated himself." Alan stepped forward. "You think we'll just let some thugs?" "Your son raised his hands first," Elias cut in. "He lost the fight he started. That's not injustice. That's consequence." Christine's voice broke into a shriek. "You teach your daughters to fight people?" "No," Elias said. "I taught them not to bow." Alan lunged. The punch was wild, ugly, driven by pride, not skill. Elias caught his wrist midair with one clean move and twisted it just enough to send Alan stumbling to the ground. The porch groaned under the weight of the fall. Christine screamed, flailing toward Elias. He caught her too. Controlled. Restrained. "Stop," he warned, his voice steel. "You came here to threaten my family. Now you've seen what it looks like when we stand inside." At that moment, the flashing lights arrived. 2 squad cars. Neighbors stepping onto their porches. Sirens low but serious. A female officer stepped out, Officer Nyla Jacobs, tall and calm, hand near her holster but not drawn. "Sir, can you tell us what happened here?" Elias released Christine's wrist and stepped back. "They came here with threats. He attacked first. I defended myself." The officers looked at the porch, at the bruises, the rage, the stunned crowd forming. Christine pointed. "You can't let them walk away from this." Officer Jacobs turned toward her. "We'll take statements. And check the footage. Several neighbors have security cameras." Layla stepped forward. "We don't need cameras to prove the truth." Nia joined her. "But if that's what it takes, we're not afraid." The Drakes were escorted to the sidewalk. Elias stood in his doorway with his daughters beside him. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't struck first. But the message had landed harder than any punch. "You brought hate to our door," Elias said almost to himself. "And you expected fear. What you found," he added, his gaze cutting through the twilight, was family. The waiting room at the Millfield precinct felt like a liminal space, neither punishment nor safety. The air buzzed under dim fluorescent lights, and everything was wrapped in an uncomfortable neutrality, the kind designed to unnerve you without leaving a mark. Elias Monroe sat with both daughters flanking him, his legs crossed, back straight. "Come. Steady." Not a single flicker of emotion crossed his face. It was the same expression he wore during military drills, courtroom depositions, and the first time he told his daughters the world wouldn't give them fairness unless they claimed it. Across the room, Christine Drake paced like a lioness in a glass cage. Her lips were smudged from yelling, hair slightly frazzled, her rhythm as restless as her entitlement was deep-rooted. Alan sat next to her with his arms folded tightly across his chest, staring straight ahead like a man who couldn't believe gravity had the audacity to pull him down. The girls were still, their fingers laced neatly in their laps. But their eyes didn't leave the hallway. They were waiting for confirmation, not of their innocence but of something much rarer, accountability. It didn't take long. Sergeant Bennett emerged from a side corridor with a thick file in one hand and a hard-to-read expression on his face. He wasn't young. And he wasn't easy to impress. But he knew what the footage showed. He knew how rare it was to see a case this clean. He looked straight at Elias. "We're done here, Mr. Monroe. You're free to go." Christine's voice cracked open the stillness. "Excuse me? What do you mean he's free to go? He attacked my husband." "No, ma'am," Bennett replied flatly, turning to face her. "Your husband attacked him. And the footage proves it. So do the witness statements. You came onto his property. You made verbal threats. You escalated the situation physically. He defended himself and his family. Fully within the law." Alan stood up, his chair scraping the floor behind him. "This is ridiculous." "You're being charged with trespassing, battery, and disturbing the peace," Bennett said before Alan could finish. "If Mr. Monroe had chosen to press additional charges, you'd be looking at more." Christine's face drained of color. You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," the sergeant replied. "You're both very lucky he didn't retaliate with half the force he's capable of. The video speaks for itself." Elias didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He simply rose from his chair, buttoned his coat, and turned to his daughters. "Let's go home." They walked toward the exit as if walking out of a place they never belonged in the first place. Christine lurched forward. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You think this changes anything?" Elias stopped in the doorway and turned slightly, not enough to give her satisfaction, just enough to leave her with clarity. "It already has." Outside, the late afternoon sun had finally pushed through the clouds. The air still carried a bite, but it was brighter now. A small group of reporters stood on the steps near the sidewalk, microphones already lifted, lenses aimed at the door. One of them spotted the Monroes and called out, "Mr. Monroe, do you have a statement?" Elias paused. For a second he said nothing. Then he turned and spoke directly into one camera lens. "There's a line between strength and control. My daughters learned that today. I hope others did too." Nia stepped beside him. "We didn't come here to fight. But we're not afraid of being seen." Layla's voice followed. "They tried to bury us. But we weren't seeds. We were already trees." And just like that, they moved past the reporters and toward the car, not in retreat, but with purpose. By evening, the footage had gone viral. Not just the hallway fight, but the entire encounter at the Monroe home. Neighbors had shared their security footage. The audio had been crystal clear. And the internet, so often cruel and fickle, responded with rare clarity. This wasn't a story about troublemakers. It was a story about control, dignity, and restraint. Comment sections filled with outrage, not at the Monroes but at the system that let things escalate so far. News anchors called it a masterclass in discipline. Civil rights advocates praised Elias for his composure. Combat veterans even chimed in, recognizing the familiar posture of a man trained in calm under fire. Christine and Alan Drake, meanwhile, were drowning in backlash. The senator's office released a bland statement about personal matters being handled privately. Brandon's social media accounts went dark. By Friday morning, he had withdrawn from St. Barrington Academy. No apologies were issued. But none were needed. Because the silence had finally broken. And that silence, the one that had allowed slurs to hide behind whispers and abuse to shelter behind wealth, was the first thing the Monroes had shattered. Monday morning at St. Barrington felt different. Not dramatically. No welcome signs. No parades. But as Layla and Nia walked into the front gates, there was no laughter behind them. There were still stares. But now the eyes held something new, curiosity, even respect. In Mr. Halbert's English class, someone had added a quote to the corner of the whiteboard in faint blue marker. Power isn't how loud you shout. It's how steady you stand when the world tries to move you. Nobody claimed credit. But Elias didn't need to know who wrote it, because the message had already landed. And the Monroes? They weren't just surviving. They were shaping the story now. The shift wasn't sudden, but it was unmistakable. By the time Wednesday rolled around, the stairs in the halls at St. Barrington Academy weren't barbed anymore. They lingered, sure, but not in suspicion. In awe. In reconsideration. The twins weren't invisible, but neither were they the novelty anymore. They were something else, something harder to define. They were presence. In the cafeteria they still sat alone, but the air felt less isolating and more intentional, as if their solitude wasn't exile but a choice. A few students nodded at them now, small acknowledgments. One girl even walked by and slipped a folded piece of paper on their table without pausing. Read. I saw everything. I'm sorry I didn't speak up. Thank you for not staying silent. Layla folded it once more and tucked it into her blazer pocket. I don't want apologies, Nia said as she picked at her salad. They're not for us, Layla answered. They're for themselves. Still, it mattered. Because for the first time, it felt like the story was turning in real time, and they were the ones steering it. That afternoon, a message came over the intercom. Nia and Layla Monroe to the administrative office, please. Their shoulders stiffened. Nia gave a tight sigh. Here we go again. But when they arrived, Principal Aldridge wasn't sitting stiffly behind his desk this time. He stood near the window, looking out like a man trying to find words he hadn't learned to say. Have a seat, he said, and for once it wasn't an order. They didn't sit. He turned around slowly. There will be no suspensions. The review is complete. Was there ever a doubt? Layla asked flatly. No, he admitted to his credit. Not really. But procedure. Was used to stall us, Nia finished. You knew what happened. I did. I also knew the weight this carries. Your story's out there now. We didn't ask for a story, Layla replied. We asked for a safe place to learn. Aldridge nodded. Slowly. Quietly. There's going to be an assembly next week. I'd like one or both of you to speak. About what happened. About what it means to stand up. Nia tilted her head. You want us to become the face of your school's diversity recovery campaign? The words hit harder than Aldridge expected. His silence proved it. Elias had taught them not to be used, even by those who claimed to support them. Layla stepped forward, her tone softer. We'll speak. But not for your redemption. We'll speak for the students still quiet. For the ones you haven't seen yet. Aldridge didn't argue. He simply nodded. Understood. As they walked out, they passed Mr. Grayson in the hallway. For once, he didn't make eye contact. His usual tight-lipped disapproval was replaced by something even quieter, regret. Let him sit with that, Nia muttered as they passed. Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Elias brought out a folder. It was thick. One. Stuffed with articles, photos, and printouts. What's that? Layla asked. Records, he said, placing it in the center of the table. From my father. And his father before him. Civil rights cases, protest files, letters, even arrest records. Nia raised an eyebrow. You've been keeping a family legacy folder? I've been building one, he replied. And now you'll add to it. Layla opened the folder and pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping dated 1965. A mugshot of Elias's grandfather stared back, dignified even in the moment of arrest. I thought we were starting something, she said quietly. You're continuing it, Elias replied. And you did it without raising your fists. You stood. And that will echo louder than any punch. They ate in quiet pride, interrupted only by the occasional text ding on their phones. More messages. More videos shared. More people reaching out. The story had gone beyond their town. By the weekend, national media picked it up. The footage aired on a late-night panel about youth activism. A podcast interviewed Layla and Nia remotely. They were even asked to write an op-ed for a major online magazine. Not once did they exaggerate. Not once did they play into drama. They told the truth and the world listened. But not everyone was thrilled. Late Sunday night, a private message came through on Nia's social media. An anonymous account. You think this is over? You embarrassed the wrong people. Watch your back. Layla got one too. Better not slip. Your kind always folds eventually. Nia showed her phone to her dad. It's starting again. It never stopped, Elias said. It just changed tactics. He called Officer Jacobs that night. She confirmed the school and local police were already monitoring the online threats. Some of these are being traced, she told him. And if they escalate, we'll be ready. Elias didn't thank her. He simply said, we already are. By Monday the tension at school had returned, but it was different now. Not overt racism, not slurs or stares. But silence. A colder, more targeted kind. The entitled few who once mocked them now ignored them completely. But the rest? They watched. And learned. During PE, Coach Silva pulled them aside. I saw the footage, she said, her voice low and even. Most of this faculty didn't act. I'm sorry for that. Layla nodded once. Thank you. There's a self-defense seminar next month, Silva continued. We're opening it up to female students. I was hoping you two might help teach. Nia raised a brow. We're still students. Exactly, Silva said. That's why they'll listen. It wasn't a reward. It wasn't redemption. It was recognition. And that was a start. The auditorium buzzed with low murmurs and occasional echoes of shuffling sneakers on polished floors. Rows of students filed in slowly, their conversations quiet but electric, as if the whole school could feel that something different was about to unfold. The assembly wasn't mandatory, but no one wanted to miss it. Not after what had happened. Not after the footage, the headlines, the storm. Layla and Nia stood side by side behind the heavy velvet curtain backstage, their matching navy uniforms crisp, the school crest stitched proudly on their chests. It was ironic. A month ago that crest had felt like a gatekeeper, a symbol of everything they weren't meant to be. Now it sat on their shoulders like a badge they'd earned the hard way. You nervous? Layla asked. Nia shook her head. No. You. No, Layla said. But I'm angry. Good, Nia replied. Speak with that. Not for them. For us. Principal Aldridge stepped up to the mic at center stage. His voice was composed, his words carefully measured, the kind of speech designed not to offend, not to admit too much. He offered words like dialogue, and growth, and moving forward. It was performative and everyone knew it. But no one came for Aldrich. They came for the girls. And now, he said finally, I'd like to invite Nia and Layla Monroe to share a few words with you. There was light applause, polite, tentative. Then Layla walked to the podium, slow and steady. Nia stood just behind her. The microphone hissed softly before settling. For a moment Layla said nothing. Then she leaned forward. I'm not going to thank you for listening. Because you should have been listening before. There was a silence, tight and sharp. But I will say this, she continued. When we walked into St. Barrington, we knew we wouldn't be welcomed. Not fully. We didn't come here to be accepted. We came to get an education. Same as anyone else. She paused. And from day one that was a problem. Not for us, but for the ones who think this place is theirs. Who think respect has to be earned by people like us, but handed out for free to people like them. A few students shifted in their seats. People laughed at us, shoved us, insulted us. Some filmed it. Some watched. Some said nothing. That silence. Her voice hardened. That was permission. Nia stepped forward now, her voice smooth and direct. You want to know what changed? She asked. We didn't. You did. You saw what it looks like when someone draws the line. When someone says, that's enough. More silence. But this time it wasn't discomfort. It was reflection. We didn't fight to be right, Layla added. We fought to be seen. And you saw us. Nia finished. Now see the others. The ones still sitting in the corners of your classrooms. The ones who walk different, talk different, pray different, look different. The ones you ignore until you can't. They didn't wait for applause. They walked off stage the same way they'd walked in, together. The auditorium didn't erupt. It rose. A slow, deliberate standing ovation, not loud, not wild, but powerful. Not because of volume but because of who chose to stand. And who stayed seated. The message had landed. Later that day Layla found a note in her locker. The handwriting was tight, nervous. I was part of the group that laughed that day. I didn't stop it. I'm sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'd like to listen. She didn't respond. Not yet. But she kept the note. Because not every apology needs to be answered. Some just need to be known. By the following week, more changes began surfacing. The administration announced the formation of a student equity board. A new policy for harassment reporting was circulated. And, most surprisingly, Mr. Grayson was reassigned to another district. The school didn't release a statement. But everyone knew. Some things had to be moved quietly to preserve the illusion of control. But the illusion had cracked now. And the truth had already taken root. At home, Elias watched it all unfold with the kind of satisfaction that didn't need words. Over dinner he said only one thing. Legacy isn't about inheritance. It's about what you refuse to pass down. Layla raised her glass of juice. Then I'm proud to refuse silence. Nia clinked hers against it. And I'm proud to inherit fire. That weekend, the girls were invited to a youth leadership summit in the city. Dozens of students, teachers, and activists gathered to speak about change, about courage, about the price of being visible in systems that weren't built for them. Nia stood on stage in front of a crowd of strangers and delivered a line that later ended up quoted on social media, posters, even classroom walls. We weren't brave because we fought. We were brave because we stood in our truth before anyone else could confirm it. It spread like wildfire. Because people weren't responding to fists or takedowns. They were responding to truth. Raw, measured, unshaken. But change, as always, invites challenge. The threats returned. Subtler this time. Masked in comments, side glances, dog whistles. Because when you rise, someone always tries to drag you back down. Late one night, Layla received another anonymous message. Enjoy your 15 minutes. It'll end. And no one will care. She showed it to her dad. Elias didn't say a word. He took out his phone and showed her something instead. A photo from years ago, Elias in uniform standing beside his own father outside a courthouse. Protest signs in the background. The caption read, "It wasn't about minutes. It was about movement." And beneath that, in her grandfather's handwriting, "We didn't march to be liked. We marched to be remembered." Layla smiled. "I guess we're remembering now." The first snowfall of the season came early that year, blanketing St. Barrington's pristine grounds in a coat of white that looked, on the surface, like a fresh start. But snow only covers things, it doesn't cleanse them. Not truly. The chill in the air didn't come from the weather alone. Layla and Nia walked through the front gates, bundled in navy coats and scarves, boots crunching over ice-glazed pavement. They moved with the same quiet confidence, but even they knew something had shifted again. Not in the crowd. In the current. The school had responded, sure. Committees were formed, new policies discussed, even a school-wide equity survey circulated. But change wasn't linear. It wasn't safe. And for every open mind, there was a shadow lurking behind it. This time the hate was smarter. Anonymous tips to the dean's office accusing the twins of cheating. Notes slipped into their backpacks calling them tokens. Online threads casting doubt on whether the fight had been staged for attention. And then one morning, a fire alarm blared during fourth period. When the students gathered outside in the cold, smoke wasn't coming from the science wing. It was coming from the girls' locker room. Someone had lit a stack of papers on fire under Nia's locker, burning through her gym bag. Her name tag melted into the floor tile. The flames had been caught before they spread, but it didn't matter. It was a warning. Officer Jacobs arrived again. Her jaw clenched as she inspected the scorched area. "No cameras in here," she muttered. "Convenient." "Too convenient," Elias said when he arrived minutes later. He knelt down, ran his finger across the singed floor, then stood. "They're done hiding," he said. "This is escalation." Principal Aldridge stammered something about isolated incidents, but Elias didn't look at him. He was looking at his daughters. "You still good?" he asked. Nia nodded. "We're not backing down." "We've come too far to fold," Layla added. That night, back home, Elias unlocked a drawer in his study. From it, he pulled a small black case and opened it to reveal a collection of newspaper clippings, medals, and a folded American flag. "Your grandfather fought battles that didn't always leave scars you could see," he said. "But some wars, they live in the systems, the rules, the silences." Nia picked up one of the clippings. It was about a protest in Birmingham. Her grandfather's name was printed under a grainy photo of a line of young black men facing down fire hoses. "He never stopped," Elias said. "Even when they burned his house. Even when they jailed him." Layla looked up. "Did he ever want to?" "Every day," Elias said. "But wanting to quit doesn't make you weak. Quitting does." The next morning, the twins returned to school. They walked in with their heads high. The scorched locker had been replaced with a temporary one, but the charred wall hadn't been repainted yet. As if the school wanted to pretend it hadn't happened, while also refusing to erase the evidence. Some students nodded at them. Others looked away. But the ones who mattered, the silent watchers, the quiet ones who had never felt seen before, met their eyes and held them. In Mr. Halbert's English class, a new quote had appeared on the whiteboard. They buried us. They didn't know we were roots. This time someone had signed it. T.S. Tina Salgado. A girl from the back row who'd never spoken above a whisper. At lunch, she approached their table. I was scared before, she said. Not of you. Of speaking up. Nia gestured to the seat across from them. You're not alone anymore. Tina sat. And from that day forward she stayed. A few days later, the Student Equity Board held its first official meeting. It was supposed to be small, 10 people max, but 23 showed up. Students of all backgrounds. Some who had never spoken to Layla or Nia. Some who once laughed with the very boys who targeted them. But they were here now. And that mattered. The faculty advisor opened the meeting, but it was Layla who stood to speak. This isn't about our fight, she said. It's about everyone's right to stand without asking for permission. They drafted a code of conduct proposal that day, one that would require bias training, anonymous reporting tools and accountability measures not just for students but for teachers too. It wouldn't pass easily. But it was the beginning. Meanwhile, Christine and Alan Drake had taken their fury to social media. Christine claimed their family was being unjustly targeted by a radical activist smear campaign. Alan posted vague legal threats and political slogans. But they gained little traction. People had seen the footage. They'd seen Elias. They'd seen the girls. The narrative had moved on without them. Brandon, now at a prep school across the state, remained conspicuously quiet. Rumor had it he was under character evaluation for upcoming college applications. No one cried for him. The next time the girls were interviewed, it was for a national youth publication. The headline read, Twin sisters stand against hate, and refuse to fall quiet. The interviewer asked Nia, what would you say to the students who still treat you like outsiders? She smiled calmly. I'm not here to be inside your circle, she said. I'm here to build a bigger one. Layla added, the people trying to erase us are using pencils. We're writing in ink. That quote trended for 3 days. Back home, Elias hung a copy of the article in his study next to his father's framed protest sign. It reads simply, Stand. Don't shrink. Because now the Monroes weren't just continuing a legacy. They were becoming one. The final days of the semester at St. Barrington arrived draped in frost and lined with tension. Holiday banners decorated the halls, and forced smiles flickered across student faces as if nothing had changed. But beneath the surface, everything had. The twins weren't just symbols anymore. They were leaders. And not because they wanted to be, but because the school had finally realized they couldn't be ignored. On the last day before winter break, the school hosted its annual Voices of Tomorrow event, a tradition designed to showcase student talent and civic leadership. In years past, it was little more than a polished PR exercise, filled with safe speeches and pre-approved applause. This year, something else stirred in the air. When Nia and Layla took the stage, the crowd quieted immediately. No one checked their phone. No one whispered. Even the teachers leaned forward. Layla stepped to the mic first. She wore the school blazer over a hoodie that read unapologetic. When we arrived here, she began, we were told, silently, subtly, that we should be grateful. That we had been allowed in. That we should be quiet, compliant, thankful. She scanned the auditorium. But let me make one thing clear. We were not given this space. We claimed it. Applause erupted, this time spontaneous, real. Students clapped. Faculty did too. Even Principal Aldridge stood in the back, arms crossed, nodding slowly. Nia followed. We didn't fight because we like conflict. We fought because silence would have made us accomplices to our own erasure. She paused. This wasn't about a punch. It was about a message, you don't belong. And this, us standing here? That's our message back. We do. The applause returned louder this time, echoing through the walls. That afternoon, Layla and Nia walked to their lockers, the same ones that had once been defaced with racial slurs and caricatures. Now they were clean. And taped to the doors were dozens of folded index cards. Messages from classmates. Some handwritten. Some printed anonymously. Some shaky, others bold. You changed the way I see things. I used to think silence was neutral. You showed me it's a choice. I'm sorry. Thank you. Because of you, I reported something I never had the courage to before. Layla picked up one and read it aloud. You made this school feel like mine too. They stood in that hallway for a long time, not speaking, just reading. Just receiving. For once, it didn't feel like resistance. It felt like recognition. Later that evening, the family sat around the fireplace back home. A soft glow lit the room, and outside the windows, snow drifted slowly under the porch light. Elias poured tea for each of them before taking his seat. "You did something rare," he said, voice low. "You didn't just survive what they threw at you. You changed what this place meant, for everyone who comes after." Nia rested her head lightly on his shoulder. "It didn't feel like that some days." "I know," he said. "The hardest changes never do." Layla reached into her backpack and pulled out the family folder, the legacy file Elias had kept locked away for decades. She laid it flat on the coffee table, gently placing the article with their headline beside their grandfather's faded protest photo. "Now it's our chapter," she said. He smiled, eyes wet but proud. "It always was." 3 weeks later, during the January board meeting, the district formally passed the policy reform package proposed by the Student Equity Board. Anonymous reporting. Bystander training. A zero-tolerance clause for racially motivated behavior, enforced not by committee but by binding code. The twins stood in the back of the meeting room, arms crossed, letting the signatures speak louder than applause. And though many in the audience smiled and congratulated them, they knew the fight wasn't over. It never truly ended. Because hatred adapts. So much strength. The final word came not from a speech or a policy. It came from a younger girl named Ava, quiet, 14, biracial and new to the school. She walked up to Nia in the hallway one cold morning and blurted, "Hey, I just wanted to say, because of you two, I don't sit alone anymore." She looked embarrassed by her own boldness, but Nia smiled. "You never had to," she replied gently. Layla added, "Now you don't have to feel like you're the only one who knows that." The girl smiled back. It was small, but real, and lasting. That's what victory looks like when you're fighting shadows. Not banners, not medals, but faces that no longer flinch, and voices that no longer whisper. As spring approached, St. Barrington was still what it had always been, wealthy, white, privileged. But now it also held a story. A story etched into its cold marble and polished floors. A story that would echo through its halls long after those who started it had gone. Because the Monroes didn't come to burn the school down. They came to light a fire no one could put out. This is more than a story about two sisters. It's a story about courage forged in silence, dignity sharpened under pressure, and what happens when truth stands its ground. They buried us. They didn't know we were roots. This story moved you, share it. Talk about it. Don't let it be forgotten. And if you believe in strength that doesn't yell, but endures, then join us. Like, comment, and subscribe to True Echo, where stories like this aren't just told, they're remembered.